Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Shortlist Showcase as part of the 2020 Queensland Architecture Awards. I'm Michael Linky, and I'm the General Manager of Membership here at the Australian Institute of Architects, joining you from my place in Melbourne. My pleasure to be with you today to take an inside look into one of the only shortlisted projects in the Hayes and Scott Award for Small Project Architecture. And I'm really excited today to have with us from Red Dog Architecture, Paul Worrell, the Managing Director and Architect of Red Dog. And joining Paul is Graham Tippins, Director as well. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you both today?
Yeah, we're well, thanks.
Good, thank you.
Good. Great to have you with us. And so we've got the next few minutes just really for you to take us through your shortlisted project in this category and tell us a little bit about it and be able to showcase it to our members in a bit more detail. So, gentlemen, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen, is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep, we certainly can.
Okay. So just as an overview, the project started as a small corner site on a service station. Client approached Red Dog Architects about using part of the site for a small retail venture that was meant to be part of the service station as well. Just to put that into perspective, this was the site. So these two photographs are existing photographs. So you'll probably notice that the service station is up on the upper level, and then at the ground level of the service station, it was just a concrete pad. So we had a couple of existing buildings next door that we had to sort of respect, and then we also had, as per this photo here, we were up at this level here with a service station. So that was the start of the project. Again, it was fairly small, and the client was thinking that they would just simply get some ground floor tenancy space back up at this level here. And the area that I showed you before, this was part of the site as well. The area below was going to be used for storage or for car parking. So it had a two-street frontage. So it's a suburban retail strip with a whole series of, as you've just seen, of ad hoc building types and 3 street frontages. So just going to the actual concept for the site, this sheet here probably explains our idea in its best form. And I suppose what came out of the challenges or opportunities of the site was that we actually explored the idea that maybe there was an undercroft space that could actually be used for retail purposes and didn't necessarily need to be seen as a storeroom or a car park. So very early in the piece, we proposed that there could be this opportunity of a 3-story building as opposed to maybe a single-story building with an undercroft. And then we started to consider, well, how does this building have some street address, or how does it actually have some presence within a fairly ad hoc bunch of buildings? So we started to perceive or conceive the building as a beacon or a marker, and we used the roof maybe as a large form to express that. Within that, we then started to extrapolate ideas about using the ground floor for retail, using the mezzanine as a retail space as well, which ended up becoming an office, and having the building sort of occupy this corner and using maybe the shape of the site to actually define its presence as well. So the bold form ended up becoming quite something that was driven out of not only the form of the site, or sorry, the shape of the site, but also by using the roof form. And then by actually popping up and creating this mezzanine space, it gave us the opportunity to have some greater volume and presence to the street. So I'll just move through now some photographs and talk about the actual solution and also some of the drawings as well. So in terms of the actual drawings, this is a picture of the actual ground floor. And as you can see, the shape of the site is basically a triangle. So we came up with an idea that we could actually start to occupy that space. There was another application put on for this, but we were successful with council. So that was a positive outcome for our client. So just moving through, and then So that was the ground floor, and then there was an upper floor. So the upper floor was just simply a mezzanine come office space, breakout space for staff that then looked down into a void of the ground floor, which was obviously where I suppose the main part of the retail was. In section, the building works fairly simply. It's a skillion roof or a single plane roof that falls towards the western boundary. And the benefit of that as well was that we were able to mitigate the scale of the building against some residential, which was to the west. So the scale of the building drops down on this edge, but towards the street, we actually took it further and obviously gave it some height and some presence. And then the mezzanine gave us that as an opportunity as well. So the roof ended up folding down towards the west and opening up towards the street. In terms of a final solution, I'll walk you through the photographs that are the professional photographs. So this is the corner of the site that actually faces the street, and you can see to the right of that is another building that's of 2 or 3 stories. So the developer also was able to obtain a lease for the building as well, which is Gossip Gowns, which is a wedding dress operator. And basically they were able to see an opportunity as well, because they had their retail face at street level, which you can see here, but then downstairs became where they had the fitting rooms and where the brides would come in and the bridesmaids would come in and try the dresses out. And as you can see, it really just sat adjacent a fairly harsh environment, which was a service station. So there was a selection of materials that were fairly authentic and also quite bold and fairly simple in terms of what they were. So metal cladding, which then also became the roof, exposed concrete block, which also gave us our fire rating capabilities. And also those products were also chosen because of their robustness and obviously trying to, I suppose, minimise a lot of heavy detailing just so that the actual form of the building remains simple and bold. So at the lower level, we were able to work with the tenant on where their signage would sit and without sort of compromising the actual design intent. Obviously, the building comes to a peak across the front and then just comes down in scale slightly to obviously that pedestrian scale, but obviously the mezzanine gives it that second level and a slightly larger scale to the street. Towards the rear of the site, as I mentioned before, the roof falls towards the west and there's residential character next door. So there was the use of screens and some landscaping, and the roof comes down and you can start to see that we even were able to get them to use the courtyard space at the lower level for the tenancy as well. So really we've ended up providing a building that's 2.5 times what the client started with. So we've sort of exceeded what their initial expectations were and obviously gave them a very strong and bold response. So this is across the sort of the eastern boundary, northeastern boundary. Fire rating was necessary. It's right on the boundary. So needless to say, the blockwork was used, but again, just minimising our material palette and also maintaining sort of some building elements that probably are going to need little or no maintenance over the years, because obviously being in a sort of a heavy trafficable area and also next to a service station, there doesn't want to be a lot of maintenance involved as well. Internally, the building was quite simple. We exposed the roof structure. We actually embraced the fit out of the tenant in terms of having the exposed air conditioning duct. And as you can see in this photograph as well, the building is almost industrial in nature, and there's a mezzanine to the upper floor that the tenant uses for meetings or for a small office space. And they've got a balcony out towards the street, which starts to give it some presence, but also activates the street edge as well. And then this is looking from the mezzanine down into that space, and you can start to see that there is actually, again, a rather industrial and simple use of materials and structure as well. We exposed the blockwork internally. We exposed the roofing. We painted it out black to sort of try and, I suppose, hide it in some ways without bringing attention to it. But given that the volume of the space was so large, it didn't feel too closed in either. Concrete floors, polished, which worked really well. And then there was an aspect out towards that courtyard space from this floor as well. So the building was starting to look at ways of having a connection to a landscape as well as to a neighbouring as well. Then looking back towards the street, we ended up having a reception foyer area. Again, there was, it's a compact site, but we believe the tenant has occupied it very well and used it very successfully. And then downstairs, again, just exposed concrete slab, exposed lighting system, little courtyard out towards the back that I explained before, which sort of, again, starts to mitigate that or moderate that scale between an industrial or, say, retail building to a residential building. And again, just a concrete polished floor. So, I mean, it's a very simple building palette, but at the end of the day, it actually allows for opportunity of flexibility and agility. If this tenant moves on and someone comes back in as a different use, it can be used as office space, it can be used as retail, it can be used as storage. But at the end of the day, we've given our client a building that actually gone beyond what their expectations were, as well as being something that is commercially viable as well. In terms of site area, it's fairly small, as I mentioned. It's probably somewhere in the order of, oh, you can probably tell me, Graham, is it about 112 square metres was the actual floor area of the site. The final internal floor area was about 246. And the external floor area, which is really just the entry to the building as well as the balcony upstairs, was around about that 45 square metres. Like to recognise or acknowledge our town planner from Place Design, who did an amazing job, the builder, who also did a pretty good job at following our details. We didn't administer the contract, but again, we had a close relationship with them in case they needed any assistance along the way. So Abri Projects were the builder, structural engineer was Encode Engineers. So there was a really good collaborative effort right to the end, and at the end of the day, a very successful project from our point of view and also from our client's point of view. So that's the project, and it's a small project, so I can't embellish it much more than that. Thank you.
No worries. A huge thanks to you both, Paul and Graham, for taking the time to present and take us through this build. It's a beautiful build. I mean, you did talk about it being in quite a stark location, but the build is so visually arresting. It's great. So I suppose we just wish you, on behalf of the Institute and all the members, all the very best of luck as you go into the shortlist for that small project architecture. So again, just a massive thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Paul Worrell
and thank you for the regional jury as well for recognising it. We appreciated them. Just before COVID, they had the opportunity of actually visiting the site. So that's a real positive, and hopefully something that'll be maintained in the future awards program.
Oh, yeah, very much. I mean, COVID has really thrown a curveball in all of our best laid plans. Yep. We didn't forecast this, but we cannot wait to get back into physical judging. I mean, it's so difficult to judge something remotely. But,
Correct.
you know, I think very much in terms of having a visual event and a virtual awards, which is happening on Thursday, the 9th of July with Queensland, you know, a really good opportunity for us to promote architecture in Queensland. We didn't want to have a voice while there was COVID, you know, going on. That it's very important to us to make sure that we continue to have a strong voice and showcase architecture right through COVID. So, you know, like I said, the Queensland State Awards will be at 7 p.m. on Thursday, the 9th of July. So there's a lot of people that will be joining and logging in, not only from Queensland, but also from all around Australia, and quite a few, from what I can see already, from overseas who have booked in. So it's got a huge reach. So while we can't celebrate together in the flesh, it's going to be the next best thing, which will be virtual. But 2021, fingers crossed, we hope to be back in and judging as normal on the ground and going through each property as we always traditionally have and will intend to continue to do. So thanks, Paul and Graham from Red Dog Architecture. It's been great to take the time for you to present and get a really good sense of the build. And of course, like I said, pleasure, no worries, absolute pleasure. Of course, I'm Michael Linke, the GM down here in Melbourne, but just if you have got a pen and paper, Queensland State Awards streamed live 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 9th of July. So be sure to join us then for what promises to be a really fantastic event. By that time, who knows, maybe we'll have come back to life across Australia, but at this stage, for this year, it will be virtual. So join us at that stage. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for joining us, and look forward to very much catching up with you. Wish you all the very best of luck for the awards, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Good to see you. Cheers.
Cheers.